It can be hard to be a leader. At least I think that's true. It can be difficult to know when to push, when to let go, when to guide, when to dictate, and just how to motivate people. So that's why, hello, by the way, you fabulous interior design professional. That's why I was excited to meet the guest who's on the show today, Shannon Hughes, because Shannon is a facilitator and a leadership coach. And she works with design leaders to help them unlock the power of high impact teams. And why do you want to do that? Because you want your team to stay together, you want them to build together, you want them all to thrive. And through the work she does, she likes to blend strategic mentorship with experiential teaching to foster people first cultures. And we're going to talk about what that even means. What is a culture and how can it apply to me if I'm running a solo entrepreneur business? So Shannon has 20 years in marketing and HR and leadership. She champions belonging and creativity and the practice of, and you'll know right away why I just was really attracted to this, the practice of an improv mindset. And she uses that to help transform how businesses lead and flourish. It's a beautiful conversation. There's going to be tons for you to follow up on in the show notes, including a link to a deeper dive into the conversation we're going to have today. And you can find that at businessofdesign.com. You can also reach out to Shannon on LinkedIn at Shannon Dean Hughes on LinkedIn, or you can find her on Instagram at Enlivened Studios with a D, enlivened past tense. And the conversation I thought was really, really fun. And we talked about some of her tenets that she uses when coaching people to help unleash their own their own power, right? Because we all have the ability to be leaders and you can't really shy away from that. Even if, as I said, you're running a solo entrepreneurship, you need to lead your clients, you need to lead the decision-making process. I need to lead myself. I need to be able to practice discipline so I do the things I'm supposed to do. If you're watching on YouTube, I look like a hot mess. That's because I got up and I did my workout before the podcast today and I cut it a little too close and didn't have time to shower and look all beautiful. But that's okay. That workout is really important to me. And I need to be able to practice self-discipline. So this conversation is good for that too. Oh my goodness. And there's just this moment where Shannon is talking about that contentious conversation with a client, and the client hits you with something you weren't expected and how you can handle that. And I'm going to let her tell you her idea, which I just thought was so beautiful. And I'm definitely going to try this. Yes, you can try this at home, and yes, you can lead. And by the way, thank you for those of you who decided it was time at last to join Business of Design. You are jumping in at a critical moment because this year, 2025, is going to, I think, give us a run for our money. We're hearing a lot of interesting feedback. I say interesting, but I mean, some people might say terrifying. We're hearing all kinds of interesting feedback from interior designers across North America and Europe about how their clients are feeling, the types of projects they're being, offered at the moment, the constraints put on those projects at the moment, and some projects being put on hold just because of all the uncertainty. So if there was ever a better time to work on your business, I'm not sure what it is. So jump into membership. Use the coaching that is provided free as part of your membership every month. Take advantage of that. We are here to make sure you can lead confidently, you can run your business and run your projects and all the beautiful things that's going to do for you. I'm so excited that that could be true for you the way it is true for me. We're really glad you're here. Cheryl's got some quick announcements. I'm sure she's going to tell you about the retreat. You must sign up for the retreat. We got immediate signups the second it went up on the website. So this year is going to be really special in terms of the deep dive we're going to do into your profit and loss statement. So incredible, incredible value, life-changing circumstances. You want to be there, and I want you to be there. So, and I'm so glad you're here. Thanks everybody for listening.
Thanks, Kimberly. Well, let's kick things off with the Business of Design retreat. It's happening in Santa Monica, Thursday, October 16th to Sunday, October 19th. Regular price $39.90, and members are going to save $500 as well if you register before March 31st. It's only a 50% down payment to hold your spot. And as Kimberly mentioned, we're so excited that we got so many early bird registrations, within the first week that it went live. We're very excited for this retreat, bringing back everything that you loved about our Business of Design Elite Retreat, combined with everything that we've learned from our boss groups over the last 5 years. So this really is going to be game changing for your business. We would love for you to join us. Make sure you grab your spot. We are going to keep the group small. You can head to the website and learn a little bit about what you can expect to get out of that treat. Again, we are going to take a look at your profit and loss. We are going to customize learnings based on what our attendees tell us that they want to achieve. Where do they feel stuck? What's holding them back? What do they want to accomplish in the year that follows? This really is going to be transformative for your business, and we would love for you to join us. By all means, reach out to me if you have questions. Head to the website, grab your spot, and register before it fills up. And we would love for you to join us in Santa Monica. And as Kimberly mentioned, thank you to all those new members who have recently joined us. 2025 has been a busy year for new members. I think that a lot of us are heading into this year with growth, with increased profits, with transformation in mind, and we can certainly help you do that at Business of Design. We would love for you to become a member. Also, as Kimberly mentioned, we do monthly coaching for all of our members. Kimberly is on those calls, and you can ask project-specific questions as you are implementing our systems into your business, how it relates to a specific project, where you're stuck. A lot of the questions we get are during that implementation process where maybe clients didn't sign on for the way that you want to be doing things and transform. So what do you do in the meantime to sort of bridge that gap between the way you were doing things and the way you are going to for every new project that you take on? As well, in between coaching sessions, I am available for spot coaching. You can email me at any time and I will get back to you with answers to your most pressing questions. We really do want you to implement as you learn, take it a step at a time and do the work. And, some members are great independent learners, very long time members who just do their own thing. They power through those programs and they're great to implement. Maybe they've got a team holding them accountable. For other members, I am that person for them. They reach out to me with, here's what I want to do next. Where do I start? And it's like, here's the 3 items that you should do next. Get back to me when these are done and we'll move on to the next step. It's great to sort of feel like I'm along on that journey with you, but we want you to learn the way you need to. So we do have multiple coaching and support opportunities available to you. Of course, you've got direct access to all of the programs, all of the systems and strategies at any time. And we would just love to have you within membership. We know that we can make a big difference in your business this year. Head to businessofdesign.com to learn more. Thanks so much.
I'm in the Bay Area. Are you in California too, right?
Yeah, I'm in Southern California.
That's right. I was just listening to your episode a little while ago about your what you had to deal with the fires and everything.
God, I even had friends from Northern California say, come stay with us. Like, it really, like, sometimes these things bring out just the best in everybody. And well, most people.
Yeah, right. It's true. It's true. Let's see. Something that's true of me is that I intentionally wake up early every day. I like to get a jump on the day, but today was a little too early. I woke up before 5 and I laid there for a bit and I got up and I did my meditation and here I am.
Well, that's okay. What's early? Like, what's your normal? Like, when you think early, what's early?
I set my alarm for 5:30, but I'm generally up at like 5:15.
Okay, so you're
You
the
too?
5 a.m. club, 5-ish club or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
you're the
Okay.
same, huh?
Yeah, I am. Well, we're weird because we live half the year in Toronto. So I
Right.
sort of switch and I'm much earlier in the California part of the year because it keeps me sort of on East Coast time also. So with
Yeah.
clients and stuff, I'm sort of anyway, it's always interesting.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, one of my dear friends does something similar. She's from Boston, but she has a house here and yeah, she tries to go to bed super early,
Yeah.
like, 8:30 or 9, and then she tries to hold those hours. That's admirable. I don't know if I could do that.
Well, it works really well in California because I don't know. Do you find I find most Californians are earlier rather than later. Like we eat dinner earlier, we wake
True.
up earlier, we just exercise earlier. And I
True.
actually really like this lifestyle a lot. So it works
Yeah.
for me. All right.
Good.
Shannon, we are not here to talk about our workup or wake up routines, although that could be part of it, right? That could be part of it. I've talked about the premise of the 5 a.m. club and how I've tried it a few times and I feel so great when I'm doing it and then I fall off the track somehow. So I got to get back to that. But we're actually going to talk about how to be better at leadership and what that can do for you and your life. And I'm hoping you're going to tell us that this will apply to you whether you have 40 employees or you're a solo entrepreneur.
Yes, I absolutely will.
Uh,
Yes. I recorded a podcast a while ago now with Mark R. LePage with Entree Architect, and his community is almost exclusively small firm architects, some of them solopreneurs, husband and wife teams.
right,
And so we had a lot of conversation about culture sounds big. It sounds hard. It sounds like it doesn't apply.
right.
And so I'm very happy to speak to that, that it does apply even to people who run solo, who are solopreneurs and run their shop alone.
Well, why don't we just start with the basic then? What does culture even mean? Because you hear it, I think, when you're thinking about working at Amazon
Right.
or Google, but what does it mean?
Do you want to, are we recording? I didn't
Oh,
realize we were
we're
recording. Culture. It's a good question. Yes, a lot of times culture is thought of in some of the larger organizations. And it's funny, actually, I've been kind of rethinking the word culture in general because it's for all the right reasons, it got a lot of traction. And then it became kind of like a buzzword, right?
Mm,
And especially with people that I work with, small firm designers, small firm architects, people who are running small businesses. And sometimes I refer to them as tiny teams, right? I mean, I'm coaching people right now who are hiring their very first employee.
right,
And so to me, culture to me means determining what it is that you stand for and then allowing that to shape how you run your business, how you serve your clients, how you answer the phone, what you say about yourself, your work, your communities, your people when you're at a networking event. That to me, that's all culture. And I think when you think about it like that, it's it can almost be it's almost the same conversation that you might have if you were talking about, say, personal branding or branding in general, right? To me, branding is what people say about you when you're not in the room. And
right.
culture can kind of take on that meaning too.
It sort of grabs values and
1000%.
if you have office, I guess it grabs the physical environment. But if you don't have an office, it grabs the vibe and the tone and the mood and what's allowable and what's not allowable, right?
That's right. That's right.
When I had my biggest team at one point, the biggest team I ever had, we had about 13 designers, and this was years and years ago before I had the 15 steps I use now and knew what the heck I was doing. But there was a lot of trash talking clients around the table, and we instituted a new rule. If you said anything bad about a client, you had to put $1 in the, it was a loonie at the time, a $1 Canadian. You had to put it in the jar. And I mean, we were able to buy lunches somewhat regularly for the first year
Wow.
because it was just too much of that. Oh, he's a jerk. He didn't make a decision. She's an idiot. She wouldn't go with what I said. And when we changed our culture and said, no, no more. It's always our fault. It's never the client's fault. The client's always lovely and wonderful. We've got to own this. It became a nicer place to work, a more fun place to work.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's culture, right?
100%.
Okay.
Absolutely. I talk about values all the time. I've got a half day or a full day, depending on the need. I run what I call a values exploration workshop. And uh, again, that can be with small teams or large teams. But the idea with that is in order to develop organizational values, despite the size of the firm, the very first step, at least in how I talk about it, is figure out what's true for you, Kimberly, me,
Mhm.
Shannon. What are my core values? And then what we do is a little bit of pre-homework to kind of, reflect, uncover, excavate. We bring those findings to the group. And now we're talking about how we collectively build these organizational values that we all together co-create. Because although we're a team of two, team of three, team of 500, whatever, we are a team. We're a group of people and we're individuals, right? And so, what worldview, experience, cultural background, belief system are you and I both bringing to that environment? And how might we find the similarities and the differences and use that as insight and a tool set to build a value system that ultimately does become your culture? So, yes, long-winded way of agreeing with you.
That's funny. And I guess I would also, I never thought about this before, but it feels like my culture extended out to suppliers who weren't part of my team, but were part of my team by extension.
Yeah.
So the contractor I worked with, the fabric company I used, that also has to be a fit. And that can align as well. You can share culture with your others.
Yes, 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 yes. I have this conversation a lot because
Mhm.
sometimes that kind of, I'm using air quotes, argument is posed, right? Like, well, they're not part of my team. They don't work with me. They're not a W-2, I'm not paying them directly, whatever. And to your point, I would argue that everybody who touches your business and everybody who's speaking on behalf of who
Mm.
you are and what you do, and they're representing your design in any myriad of ways, needs to have an understanding of what it is that you, the firm owner, what you stand for. And yes, that does include, of course, your aesthetic, the work you do, your portfolio, understanding it at kind of the deliverable level. But what went into it? Where's the mind and the heart and the spirit of who you are? And I keep pointing to you because we're having this conversation
Yeah,
between
yeah.
the two of us. But yeah, I mean, what are your partners saying about business of design when they're representing your brand in a conversation at a barbecue?
Mhm.
So having that understanding is important, and to be explicit about that.
Yeah.
If you go
And
into partnership with someone new, say to them, "Hey, these are our core values here. Can you tell me a little bit about how do you exemplify integrity on your day-to-day basis? Tell me about
Mhm.
that."
Well,
And
I think to also anybody who you allow to meet your client is either going to improve your reputation or tank your reputation. Like there's not going to be much in between. So years and years ago, we came up with, because my main job is interior design. So I have a team. So that's my day job. Business
yeah,
of design is my passion project. But years ago, we decided to come up with a contract for all of our trades. And when we begin a new job, when we're on the job site, we blow up a big version of the contract. We put it on the wall to remind the trades, but also to let the clients know, here's what we all have agreed to in your home while we're here working on your behalf. And if you see anything that seems out of line with what you see on this wall, you call me.
Yeah.
And it's a really nice way of letting the clients know that we've thought about who we've allowed to come into your sacred home, and we're going to be responsible for those people while they're there. So I'm so happy that we did that. And I guess at the time I never thought about that as culture, but that's 100% culture.
It
Yeah.
is. It is. And I love that. A lot of times I talk about setting agreements. And that setting agreements exercise, of course, can be leveraged in all ways, shapes, and forms, right? You can set agreements in a small team. How do we function as a team? When do we meet? What are the expected norms and behaviors? And in the case that you just were speaking to, how do we kick off a project and make sure that everybody's on the same page, not only in terms of the scope of the project, which is kind of what the default is, the actual work, which
Right.
is, of course, important.
Right.
What are our standard operating procedures? What's the
Yeah.
heartbeat here? What are the expectations about, I don't know, texting or emailing,
Yeah.
right? I
Wearing your outside shoes in a client's home, right? Like simple things that
exactly.
might seem innocent, but could in fact cause a lot of stress to the client. When we think about leadership, that also sometimes feels like something that big firms have to think about. Because if I
Mhm.
just work for myself, who am I leading? But the fact of the matter is, we're frequently called upon to lead our clients,
Yes.
frequently called upon to lead trades. And can I lead myself? Can I be disciplined and take ownership of how I maintain how I spend my time in my day? Is that like self-leadership? Let's get into the conversation of leadership.
I love that. And I love that idea of self-leadership. And I would say absolutely. It takes practice,
Mhm.
though. Just as it takes practice to lead outside yourself and lead a team of people. Um, it's a similar but unique skill set to kind of lead yourself, right? Because leading yourself a lot of times is starting with that core value set, understanding how do you want to run this business? I mean, most of us went into entrepreneurship, or, in my case, I left big corporate, a number of years ago because I wanted independence, I wanted creativity, I wanted autonomy. So if those are the reasons that I chose to open my boutique, consultancy, how do I make sure that I continue to hold those as my North Star and not get distracted by shiny objects, comparativitis, all the things?
Ah, comparativitis. Okay, I hadn't heard it put that way before, but I like that. I occasionally get a case of that.
I have a friend who reached out to me on WhatsApp the other day, and she wanted me to sort of talk her off of a proverbial ledge because she was having an attack from Beatrice, her inner critic.
Yeah.
She named her Beatrice,
Oh,
and
I
then she
love that. I love
and then she
that. What a
kept,
scoldy name, too.
I
Like
know,
Beatrice. Sorry if you're Beatrice and you're listening in.
right? Yeah, really. But then she said, then she dubbed her, she came up with another character in her little committee, and she named this character uh, Comparasaurus. It's like, yes.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I like this. I think I'm gonna have to come. I've named my GPS. That's as far as I've gotten. Her name is Gabriela Pendejo Sanchez,
Ooh.
GPS, and I call her Gabby. So, Gabby, where are we going? Gabby?
I love that. I love that.
You had shared with us in an application 6 tenets of connective influence. And I really loved these and I appreciated them having an improv background. And I loved it to take improv course is. So I love these six tenets. I hope that's part of the leadership, and maybe you can tell us what they are and how we can use them.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah. This is well, such is true of many things. I'm sure you and your audience can relate to this. When you have those moments of creative insight or an idea, it feels brand new, and yet I wear a bracelet oftentimes actually that's engraved, not today, but I don't have it on today, but it says it's all part of it. It's
Mhm.
all part of it. And the reason I bring this up is because although connective influence was a model that I thought, oh my gosh, this is brand new. Of course, it's not brand new. I've been borrowing from this and building it and constructing it in my subconscious for years,
Right.
and it's here now, which is lovely. And you're right. So it's a model I called connective influence. Um, and the way that I define connective influence is it's about being a leader who trusts others, who co-creates with their teams, who really reveres guiding instead of directing, right? So it's this kind of flexible, intuitive, open-minded, beginner's mindset type of a leader. And it has six components that I use in building this. I borrowed from improv. So bear with me. Because sometimes people are like, wait, what? You improvisational theater? How is
No,
that
we've
related?
actually had, I think, at least one, maybe two podcasts about improv. We had a Second City
You
alum,
did.
Marilyn Smith, came on and talked about what you could learn from improv. And I've said this all the time. If you struggle with speaking confidently with your
Yeah.
clients in those situations, take a beginner's improv course, and it will open your life up in a really beautiful way. I think I love it anyway.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I didn't I have to listen to that episode because I can go on and on about this stuff all day. So it's so nice to know that I'm in good company with someone who understands why this work is so important.
Well,
Yeah.
okay. So your
Yeah.
tenants, though, let's hear them
So
because I don't know that I've heard them all, even in improv. That's interesting.
sure. Yeah, sure. So the first tenet of the connective influence model, and these don't go sequentially. I do workshops on all these in different ways depending on the objectives of my clients. But the first one I have here is hold brave space. Hold brave space. Now, I'm really intentional about not using the term safe space,
Mm,
because who am I to say what feels safe for you, right?
mm,
You have a whole lived experience that may have included uh, trauma, may have included you might be have fears or uncertainty or doubt about certain things, and I can't, as a facilitator and a coach, claim that I'm going to create what's safe for you.
mm.
What I can hope to do is to create brave space. And in improv, the relatedness to improv for me is it's take some courage to make up something that's never been seen before and will never be seen again, right?
Right.
So how do we like exercise that kind of that energy of creative um,
Fearlessness,
there you
or
go.
right? Because you do have fear. When you're brave, it doesn't mean you're not fearful. It just
No,
means your knees are knocking, you're going to do it anyway.
that's right. That's right. And when it comes to leadership, brave space is really about building psychological safety. So what practices can you employ with your teams or with people in your community when you are needing to have conversations or give feedback or redline something or hear some critique from a client and then talk about that as a group? Well, it requires a bit of brave space. So what that means, I mean, there's a lot of work and research, namely by Amy Edmondson and others about psychological safety, which is really creating a space where people feel like they can try things and fall down, make mistakes, get back up again and keep going. And to do that without any sort of punitive repercussion. So that's what holding brave space means for me. Um, the second one is listen to learn. And this is really all about curiosity. Oftentimes we listen to speak,
Yeah,
right? It's
yeah.
like,
When will she be done talking so I can say this thing that I'm holding in my mind for the last 5 minutes?
that's exactly right. And when we're doing that, I mean, everything is hijacked, right? Because we're not actually present in the moment. We're thinking
Right.
about what's on our mind and wanting to share our story, which is all rooted in ego. And I don't mean ego in an egotistical way, but in a, we all have an ego and it wants to run the show, drive the
Mhm.
car, do all the things. So listen to learn. The third tenet to the connective influence model, um, and I is serve the scene you're in. And I don't know what order I gave you, but serve the scene you're in. Now, in improv, um, again, when you're on stage, you're there, you are with your co-creators, your players, you are on stage, you might get an idea from the audience, and now you have to create a scene. Well, we don't even know in this scene who we are to each other. We don't know where we are, what kind of environment we're going to create, what story is going to unfold. All we have might be a word from the audience, right? And that's all we have to work with. So we don't have time to think about what has happened and what's to come. We need to be in this moment. So serve the scene you're in is being in this scene with presence and intentionality, and again, listening, staying curious and open so that I can receive what offers you're giving me
Mhm.
as a co-creator in this scene, and then
Right.
work to build on that, to yes and whatever offer I'm being given.
That is just to put that into practical terms, like that I think you're in a situation where you're going to go have this meeting with a client and you're afraid it's going to be contentious. There's something that's gone wrong and you've got anxiety, and I'll rehearse 13 different ways it could go. And so I preload these existing scenes in my head. And then the client says something that's not one of my 13 options, but I'm still thinking about my 13 options and I miss what she said. So it's that
Yes.
idea of not preloading too much. Of course, you want to think about, some what it might be, but it goes back to that listening with curiosity. What's really happening for you? Because otherwise, I'll rush in and try to solve the problem that isn't the problem.
That's
And the
right.
client will leave feeling frustrated that she wasn't heard or he wasn't heard.
That's right.
So I like that. So serve the scene you're in. Really listen to what somebody's saying and react to only what they're saying, not the other 13 things you might have in your head.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
that takes some discipline. I have to take a couple of breaths to be okay with that awkward pause,
Yeah.
you know, even say, can I have a minute to just think about this? I hadn't expected this, or,
Right. Right. I love those. And those are fabulous tips and tricks. I mean, sometimes when we have silence, when we're, confronted with silence, I mean, 10 seconds of silence for most of our brains feels like an hour. And
yeah,
so we keep talking, right? I mean, I'm imagining myself on a sales call, right? I'm
yeah,
sure maybe you and your audience can identify with that.
oh,
And
yeah.
many coaches in the business development and sales space will say your thing and then stop talking.
Yeah.
Just because our amygdala, we get hijacked by the fear centers in our brain and we start
Right,
thinking, "Oh my gosh, what does this mean?" And we're just spiraling.
right.
So yeah, and it does take practice. And a lot of times, I'm glad you mentioned breathing because that can be an embodied experience to say, "Woo, thank you for your feedback. I need to, and touch your chest. I need to sit with that for a second. Give me a second. I gotta think, and buy yourself a little time. We're
Yeah,
human. That's okay."
yeah. Well, that's a beautiful way to do it. I love that. Whoosh. I'm gonna try
Yeah.
that because it lets them know it landed.
Mhm,
Something landed that you said it was impactful. And I don't have a preloaded answer for you. So
mhm,
what you're about to get is something sincere
mhm.
that's happening right now in real time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
And
love that.
use what beautiful language to actually use. I
Mhm.
didn't everything that you just said. Listen to the playback on this because you can use your own moments of genius in the next time that happens to
There
you.
you go. There you go.
Yeah. Um, Great. We another tenet of this framework is know and challenge your patterns.
Mm.
So we all have blind spots, and blind spots, just by nature or by definition, means we do say, behave, uh, interact, engage with other people, with experiences, with projects, with our work in ways that we aren't aware of. And so really understanding to the best of our ability what it is that are kind of our default patterns. Some of them are working very well for us and they don't need any enhancement or editing at all.
Right.
Others, maybe. So how can we, what comes to mind for me as a tip or a trick here is, you know, ideally, we have a community of people, friends, family, coworkers, people we trust that we lean on, right? In any way that feels right for us, for advice to cry on, shoulders to cry on. Are those the people that we can say, hey, I was just in this meeting and it didn't land very well with the client. And I'm not sure. I feel like I said something or I did something that rubbed them the wrong way and I don't know what it was. Can you tell me, can we have a conversation about what you, my best friend, my family member, see as some of my blind spots, you
Mhm.
know? And Adam Grant actually had a podcast that he did a little while ago. On him and his team, he actually sends out, I think, on like a quarterly basis, he sends out invitations to his team members to sit down with him and share with him what they think and see as his blind spots. And
Interesting.
yeah, it's vulnerable. Don't get me wrong.
Mm.
Uh, and another way to shape that conversation is, hey, would you be willing to sit down with me? I want to share with you, Kimberly, what I think your rock star superpowers are. Okay, here they are, and I'm going to give them to you. Every time you're in a client meeting with me, you shine a spotlight on me that makes me feel awesome. Every time we put together a scope of work, we have a share of voice and a sense of togetherness that I don't get in other teams that I work with, right? Now, Kimberly, if you don't mind, I'd love to share some things that I see that I think if we work on them together, we might be even better at
Mhm.
those rock star moments.
Right.
That might be a really good way to sort of have conversations about that. And then
Yeah.
other things are not so behaviorally oriented. Sometimes they're about how we use our body language, what we're doing with our face when we're listening, right? So to really have an understanding of what those are, and then biases, of course, tie into this too. We
Right.
all have bias. Much of it is subconscious. Um, and these are lifelong practices, by the way. This isn't
Right.
something you sit down, you and I have a call and we're like, great, figured it all out, got that
Right.
figured. Like, that
Definitely, and
doesn't,
definitely not limited to work, right? These will work with your best friend, your spouse, your other in any way. Yeah. They
yes,
won't work with your mother-in-law though. Don't bother.
maybe,
I've tried.
maybe.
Can work. I love my mother-in-law, but it is what it is. It's a hard baked loaf and it's going to stay that way. You know what I mean?
Analogy is amazing.
I mean, she's 88. She gets to be fully baked. That's how
hmm
that is.
hmm Yep, I hear that. I definitely hear that.
One of your
Um,
tenets, and I'm not sure which order this is, but it's about practicing bold humility. That is something I think that is so lacking in the world today. The examples we are getting are nothing close to that. And that might even look to some like weakness. But tell us how humility can, and it's not humiliation. So tell us what humility is and tell us why it might matter in our capacity as leaders.
Thank you. And I thank you for that question, and I will expand on it. And I really want to make sure we don't lose sight of that word bold, because especially as women or
Mhm.
female identifying leaders, that one, humility, we're actually pretty good at humility, a lot of
Mhm.
us.
Mhm.
And how can we insert the boldness so that we don't
Mhm.
over-index on the humility, right? We have decades and decades and decades of saying we're sorry when we're not.
Right.
Uh,
Programming.
Programming,
Yeah.
right? Cultural programming. So the bold word, I really want to make sure we emphasize too.
Mm.
Humility is important. Humility, at least, I don't have a definition here in front of me, but for me, it's about recognizing my humanness and recognizing the humanness in others.
Yeah.
We're not perfect. We make mistakes. We also do really awesome amazing things.
Mhm.
So how do we hold all those things to be true? And I think that's where the humility comes in. And the bold humility is, my subtext on this is ego free, right? So how do we claim our genius, talk about our work, stand in our power, make sure our voice is heard in a way that is bold and does recognize that, damn, I did a really good job on that. Or,
Mm.
huh, I have a lot of experience with this. Look at me. And at the same time, know that there needs to be a level of humility to that so that there is that humanness between that human exchange between people. And as a leader, it again kind of goes back to what I said earlier about being the guide, not the director, right? So how do you hold space, hold brave space with people that you work with, manage, lead, co-create with, commune with in any way, and hold that boldness and that humility together in the same time so that there is room left for a two-way conversation, for
Mhm.
reciprocity, rather than grandstanding. Oftentimes I say in my coaching and my facilitation work, I'm your guide on the side. I'm your guide on the side, not your sage on the stage. I don't have interest in sitting here pontificating about what I think is right. What I do have a lot of interest in is sharing my perspective and then leaving space to hear what you have to say.
Mhm.
So, which is kind of true for all these tenets, but I think that hopefully speaks a little bit to your questions around humility. Did that?
I
Yeah.
loved that definition, and sort of skipped the bold as I was thinking about that. And it's there in print. You'll see it when you go to the show notes. And I love that because we've talked before about this ingrained programming to play small, to throw credit at others all the time. Seen it a million times where a female on a job site says, "Oh, I couldn't have done it without the contractor."
Mhm.
Okay, the contractor couldn't have done it without you.
Right.
Like, why always defer? Why always defer? And as you said, it's decades or hundreds of years of programming that makes us do that. So
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
It's kind of it's a seesaw or something, right? You don't want to somebody had told me humility is this idea that you are no better or no worse than any other person.
Oh, I love
Like
that.
ever, no better, no worse than any other person. So, but, okay, I can work with that.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
And you mentioned gossip a little earlier. Gossip,
Yes.
gossip
Do
comes
you
from
have some? Just kidding.
yeah. Hey, I got the scoop. What's the tea?
And our credibility goes right out the window with that,
Yeah, right.
right?
Seriously. Um, but oftentimes, well, gossip comes from a lot of places, right? A lot of times it comes from fear. It comes from not wanting,
Yeah,
don't look at me, look at everybody else. All the fingers are pointing outward.
yeah.
Gossip can also come from this place that you were kind of just describing, this idea of, oh gosh, I just lost my train of thought. I'm so sorry.
Hello. It's because I made
Uh,
a joke.
yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Um, I think I was coming from the place of gossip sometimes comes from this sense of from an emboldened sense of self that's not rooted in reality. It can be. And that
Interesting.
in a culture can spurn a lot of toxicity.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
It doesn't
right?
take very much of that kind of behavior to pepper the environment. We had an employee, and I called her the union rep behind her back, which is horrible to nobody, by the way. It was in my head. I gossiped in my own brain. But the person who will say, everybody in the office hates this. We all have been talking about how much we hate this.
Yeah.
And she was that toxic person who was constantly complaining and stirring the pot. And it really did make the office an uncomfortable place for a little while. And I'm lucky I was working with a coach at the time. And so we implemented some new culture, I guess, which is from now on, we will use I language. So if you come to me and there's a concern about your workplace or conditions or something that's making you unhappy, I want to hear it, but you must use I language. And that just crippled the toxic person, the union leader. She couldn't do it. It was always we. And
Yes.
I said, I invite you to tell everybody else, the whole office who also shares this opinion, to come in one at a time and tell me. And I would listen to them respectfully. So, of course, nobody else came in, and it was her. And yeah, ugh, gossip is,
Yeah.
it's not good. It's not healthy. I also find a tendency to want to like get someone closer to me by sharing a little bit of a gossip, Like if you share some insight about someone that's not perhaps perfectly lovely, it might make you
Yeah.
closer to the person you're giving that information to. But those aren't really the healthier relationships.
That's funny. I can relate to that. I can relate to that. And there's lots of science and certainly lots of conversation about gossip that sometimes, so there's, the toxicity that we've been talking about that can come from gossip. Uh, Gossip can be helpful. It can help build connection. Um, to your point that you just mentioned, because I can relate to that when I used to work in companies, it's like, ooh, let's exchange a little something that is being that I'm hoping comes across to you as vulnerable, but really what it's doing is pinning somebody who's not in this conversation, right? It's talking about
Right,
somebody who's not here.
right,
So that's actually not vulnerability, right?
right,
That's but that it's kind of disguised as vulnerability, like, hey,
right.
hey, hey, let me tell you this thing that's such a big secret. I'm going to tell you about this other person who's not here. And now it's a bid for connection, for
Mm.
trust building. And some people I've read a couple of articles, I believe, on LinkedIn. I can wish I could recall them right now, have said that there can be a level of healthy gossip in that way.
Mm.
I don't know.
I suppose if you're not practicing character assassination, hey, can we
Right.
talk about the meeting that just happened? I don't know about you, but I did not like the energy
There you
around
go.
the fault. Like, I'm not naming anybody's name. I'm just saying, the vibe and the energy wasn't working for me. Maybe that's kind of it. And then that's an okay form of gossip in quotation marks.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think
Interesting.
that's a great example. That's a great example.
Interesting.
The tricky part with gossip is, people start, especially when they're talking about that higher level organizational gossip, at some point it's like, okay, if we're going to complain about it, shouldn't we also be the ones to do something about it?
Right.
You know,
Right.
which you could spin that sentence off into a whole thing that's happening on the global stage. But at some point, you have to
Heavy
kind of
sigh.
you have to find a level of resourcefulness within you to say, oh wow, everybody seems to be complaining about whatever the way that the organization is structured or so and so's etiquette in meetings. Well, this is just going to keep going. And we'll ultimately lose people. We'll probably
Right.
sour our relationships with projects and clients. So we got to step up and do something, at least
Yeah.
say something. And that does require a level of bold humility and an ability to create a brave space to have a conversation like that.
Hmm. And we can't talk about any tenets that are based loosely or largely on an improv without talking about yes and. So talk to us about that.
Thank you. Yeah, yes and is very well known as kind of the number one foundational rule of improv. And the thing about yes and that's a little tricky is the word yes, we commonly understand to mean agree, right? People say yes when they agree. In improv, yes doesn't always mean agree. And in life, in leadership, yes, in my view, doesn't always mean agree. What it means is that you're receiving
Mhm.
and you're acknowledging. So, and then the word and means to build upon.
Mhm.
So, and I'll kind of show you an example of that in an improv scene and then in a leadership setting. In an improv scene, you and I might come on stage and I am gesticulating like I'm writing on a chalkboard. I'm making, I'm facing the audience and I'm moving my hand across the air like I'm writing something on a chalkboard, maybe. And you come into the scene and you say, Mrs. Griffin, what are we studying today in class? Okay, well, as Mrs. Griffin, I'm like, okay, great. I'm Mrs. Griffin now.
Mhm.
I'm going to yes and your offer. I'm going to say, well, Johnny, why don't you have a seat? We're going to get started once everybody joins the classroom. All right, we're yes anding. You said I'm the teacher, da da da. Now we have a story going, right?
Right.
So that's an example of yes anding in a scene. In a business setting, you might be in a brainstorming meeting or you're talking with a client, maybe on a job site, and the client is making, oh God, we could do this and we could do that. And can you imagine we're doing this? And now some of these things that they're recommending could be in budget and in scope. Many other things might be out of scope and might be
Right.
additional budget, right?
Right.
So how do you yes and when not everything can be in scope and not everything can be done? If you think about yes and in the way of receiving rather than agreeing, you might say, wow, client, yes, that is an amazing idea. And you're absolutely right. If we did that with the kitchen, that would just open up the space. And I can just imagine the light coming in all these different ways. Yes. And let's get a little bit specific about kind of how that falls into the project that we have right now. I'll make a note of it and let's talk about that because it will likely have repercussions and implications with time and budget,
Right. Ah, I like
right?
that.
Now, a different way would be, somebody in it without a yes and frame. What? No, that's not in the scope. What do you? I didn't. That's not part of this. We can't do that.
Right.
Let's
Right.
or to use your
Who do you
example
want to work
before.
with? Right? Who do you want to work with? I want to
Right.
work with the yes and person for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Okay, I'm going to see. I've not ever thought of it that way in a client meeting. I'm going to try to see when I can use that next. I love that. Shannon, we love to end every episode with something we call design intervention, which is just a great piece of business advice. What comes to mind?
What comes to mind for me is some advice that I got from a mentor a number of years ago, and I love it. And I use it. I use it all the time, which is try to put ourselves in the places and spaces of other people that are doing variations or the same kind of work that we're doing, and ensure that in that room, you've got people who are just a couple steps behind you in your business and your growth. And you also have people who are a couple steps ahead of you. Because what a beautiful thing to run a business by looking up to people who are doing things that you haven't thought of doing, might be able to follow their lead, learn from, ask questions of, and also bring other people along for the ride and share with them the insights that you've learned. So, and it's uncomfortable sometimes, right? It's like, oh gosh, I'm going to go to that conference. And I mean, this is like big wigs and the design and like these are people who whatever XYZ, right? And our Beatrices in our mind can turn on and say, well, you're not good enough, you're not that far ahead, and what are you, who are you to think it? But if we can put ourselves in those spaces with people who are ahead of us and people who are behind us, what a beautiful kind of full circle we're creating, because we can, what is it, rising tides lifts all boats.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know to see ourselves as the competition all the time is necessary in some spaces, and in other ways, come on, let's just all try to be in this together and teach others and learn from others by putting ourselves in those vulnerable spaces.
I love that. That is beautiful. Yeah, it's a bit like if you want to play tennis, you've got to play with someone who's a little bit better.
Yeah,
And then maybe you owe it to somebody who's a little bit further behind you to give them somebody to play with also, right? I guess that
exactly.
falls back into humility. It's kind of a like I can go both ways. I'm at one with all these people, which is beautiful. Thank you so, so much. It was so wonderful to speak with you this morning, and I hope life in Northern California is good.
Life in Northern California is pretty good. Thank you.
Thank you so much.